I'm Emily, 35, and if you'd asked me a few years ago, I'd have told you my life was just about perfect. I was climbing the corporate ladder at a renowned company, making my way to a department manager position. It was during those long hours at work that I stumbled upon something unexpected, something that wasn't part of my meticulously planned career path. Love. His name was Jake, a colleague from a different department. He wasn't as high up on the career ladder as I was, but that never mattered to me. Our connection was instant, and before we knew it, our office romance blossomed into something deeper, leading us down the aisle. The company we worked for was supportive. After all, it wasn't a secret affair, but a serious relationship that everyone could see was genuine. We were happy, living in a beautiful, spacious house that we bought together. It was more than a home. It was a symbol of our future, of the family we dreamed of starting. But our seemingly perfect life wasn't without its cracks. The main issue? Our earnings. I always earned more than Jake, and while it never bothered me, it was a thorn in his side. One chilly evening, as we sat in our living room, Jake brought it up yet again. Does it ever get to you? The whole money thing? He asked, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames in the fireplace. No, Jake, it really doesn't. I love you, not your paycheck. We're in this together, remember? I replied, trying to reassure him. He let out a long sigh. I just feel like I should be the one bringing in more, you know? It's not traditional. I reached for his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. We're not a traditional couple, Jake. We make our own rules. We're happy, aren't we? He nodded, but his eyes didn't mirror the conviction in his voice. The topic was a recurring one, resurfacing every now and then, each time leaving a faint but lingering unease in the air. Life has a way of throwing you off course when you least expect it. That's exactly what happened to me, Emily, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday. It was supposed to be a routine medical checkup, nothing more. I sat there in the sterile doctor's office, fidgeting with the hem of my shirt, waiting for the usual all clear. Instead, what I got was a jolt that turned my world upside down. The doctor, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, had a serious look as she delivered the news. Emily, I'm sorry to tell you this, but you have cancer, she said gently. For a moment, everything stood still. The word cancer echoed in my head like a dreadful bell. Fear, disbelief, a sense of unreality washed over me. What? Are you sure? I managed to stammer, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. The doctor nodded, her expression empathetic. I understand this is a lot to take in. We need to discuss your treatment options. Her voice faded into the background as I grappled with the shock. Cancer? Me? It didn't make sense. I was healthy, or so I thought. When I left the doctor's office, I felt like I was in a daze. The world seemed to go on around me, but I was stuck in that moment of devastating revelation. I called Jake as soon as I could. He answered after a few rings. Hey, Em, how did the checkup go? His voice was casual, expecting routine news. Jake, it's not good, I said, my voice shaky. What's wrong? Talk to me, Em, he replied, his tone shifting to concern. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. It's cancer, Jakey. I have cancer. There was a heavy silence on the other end. Then, oh God, Em, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? Where are you? I'm still at the clinic. I'm not okay, Jakey. I'm scared, I admitted, feeling a lump forming in my throat. I'll come right over. We'll face this together, Em. You're not alone, he said firmly. Hearing his words, a small flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe, just maybe, we could get through this nightmare together. The following days were a blur of appointments, tests, and consultations. I started my treatment, which included chemotherapy. It was exhausting, both physically and emotionally. Jake was supportive at first, accompanying me to my sessions, holding my hand, trying to be strong for both of us. But as the treatments took a toll on me, I noticed a change in Jake. His visits became less frequent, his reassurances felt more forced. Whenever I asked him why he couldn't come, he always had the same excuse. Work is just crazy right now, Em. I'm so tired by the end of the day, he'd say over the phone. I tried to understand, to be sympathetic. After all, he was dealing with this in his own way, too. But deep down, I couldn't shake off the feeling of growing distance. the creeping sense of loneliness that started to envelop me. In those moments of solitude and struggle, I found an unexpected source of strength. My parents and my best friend, Lisa. They were my rocks, calling me daily, visiting me whenever they could, offering words of encouragement and love. While I was trying to adjust to my new reality in the hospital, undergoing treatment and dealing with the side effects, life outside continued. I missed our home, the comfort of our bed, the little rituals Jake and I had. Despite his decreasing visits, I clung to the hope that we were still a team. One day, Lisa came to visit. She brought some magazines, my favorite snacks, and a sense of normalcy that I craved. But there was something off about her. She seemed uneasy. "Hey, what's up? You seem a bit distracted," I said, trying to read her expression. Lisa hesitated before speaking. "Emily, I don't want to worry you, but something strange happened the other day." My heart skipped a beat. "What happened?" "Well, I was walking past your house, and I heard laughter. Loud, female laughter. It sounded like there was a party or something," she said cautiously. A cold shiver ran down my spine. "A party? But Jake didn't mention anything. Maybe he had friends over." Lisa bit her lip, looking uncomfortable. "I don't know, Emily. It just felt weird. And I haven't seen Jake around much lately. I'm worried there might be someone else." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't want to believe it, but the seeds of doubt were planted. Was Jake seeing someone else while I was stuck here, fighting for my life? "I need to know, Lisa. I can't just sit here wondering," I said, a sense of urgency rising within me. "I understand. But what are you going to do?" Lisa asked, her concern evident. "I need to go home. I need to see for myself," I decided, my mind made up. "But Emily, your treatment—" "I know. But I can't ignore this." "I have to know the truth," I interrupted, feeling a mix of anger, betrayal, and fear. Lisa helped me arrange for an early discharge. The doctors weren't thrilled, but my recent results were promising, and they agreed under the condition that I would continue my treatment on an outpatient basis. The drive home was nerve-wracking. Every possible scenario played out in my mind. I was scared of what I might find, yet I needed answers. As we pulled up to the house, everything looked normal from the outside. But the moment we stepped in, it was clear something was off. The place felt different, like it wasn't ours anymore. We heard voices coming from the living room. My heart pounded in my chest as we walked in, bracing for what we might find. To my utter shock, there was a couple sitting there, looking as surprised to see us as we were to see them. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. The woman, probably in her late 30s, stood up. "I'm sorry, but who are you? We're renting this place." "Renting? This is my house. I live here with my husband, Jake," I said, struggling to process her words. The man, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "We've been here for a couple of weeks. We made a deal with Jake. He said the house was going to be sold, and we're interested in buying it." My world came crashing down at that moment. Not only was there another woman in my house, but now I was being told that my husband, the man I trusted, was planning to sell our home without my knowledge. I felt like I was in a nightmare, one that I couldn't wake up from. As I stood in the living room of what was once a symbol of our shared dreams, the couple who had unwittingly walked into this mess looked at me with a mix of confusion and pity. They introduced themselves as Mark and Sandra, clearly uncomfortable but trying to be polite. I could hardly focus on their words. My mind was in turmoil. "Please, can you call Jake? I need to speak to him," I said, my voice shaky but firm. Mark nodded, taking out his phone. "Of course, I have his number. He said to call if we needed anything." The wait for Jake to arrive was agonizing. My heart raced with a cocktail of emotions: anger, betrayal, disbelief. When he finally walked in, the look on his face was one of shock, but not the kind I expected. "Emily, what are you doing here? You should be in the hospital," he said, his voice tinged not with concern, but annoyance. His reaction only fueled my anger. "What am I doing here? Jake, what are you doing? Selling our house behind my back?" He had the audacity to look irritated. "I can explain, Emily. It's simple, really." "Explain?" Explain how you could betray me like this? My voice was rising despite my efforts to control it. Jake's expression hardened. Listen, Emily, you're sick. The cancer might not even go away. I have to think about my life too. I can't be tied down, waiting for whatever comes next. I felt like I had been slapped. His words were cruel, unrecognizable from the man I thought I knew. You're talking about selling our home, our life together, as if it's just a transaction. Is this really you, Jake? Disbelief and hurt were evident in my voice. He shrugged, a cold look in his eyes. It's practical, Emily. You're not going to make it, and I need the money to build my life. Besides, I would get this house anyway if you know. His words were like a knife twisting in my gut. The reality of his betrayal was worse than any suspicion I had harbored. I can't believe you, Jake. After everything, this is what it comes down to. Money and convenience? I was struggling to hold back tears. Jake seemed unfazed. Life goes on, Emily. Yours might not, but mine will. I need to think about my future. His brazenness left me speechless. I had imagined many scenarios, but nothing could have prepared me for the callousness I was witnessing. And you think you'll just get away with this? Selling our house? Leaving me with nothing while I'm fighting for my life? My voice trembled with a mixture of rage and pain. He shrugged again, a gesture that now filled me with revulsion. I'm doing what I have to. You can do whatever you want, Emily. It doesn't matter to me anymore. I felt a surge of resolve amidst the chaos of my emotions. I'll fight you on this, Jake, and the company will hear about how you treat your sick wife. You won't get away with this, he scoffed. Do what you want, Emily. I'm done here. With that, he turned and left, leaving a trail of coldness behind. I stood there, shaken to my core, realizing that the man I loved was a stranger to me now. I knew at that moment that this was a battle I had to fight, not just for my health, but for justice and dignity. After Jake left, a heavy silence filled the room. Mark and Sandra stood awkwardly, clearly wanting to escape the tense atmosphere. I couldn't blame them. Look, I'm really sorry about all this. We had no idea, Mark said, sounding genuinely apologetic. Yeah, we just wanted a place to stay. We didn't know about everything, Sandra added, her eyes full of sympathy. I gave them a weak smile. It's not your fault. You were just looking for a home. They offered to leave, but I insisted they stay. It wasn't their fault that Jake had dragged them into his deceit. After they left, I sat down on the couch, my mind racing. I felt betrayed, angry, and helpless. But amidst all those emotions, a fiery determination was taking shape. I wasn't going to let Jake walk all over me. The next morning, I called my lawyer and explained everything. He was shocked, but promised to help me fight this. Don't worry, Emily. We'll make sure he doesn't get away with this, he assured me. I felt a small glimmer of hope. With my lawyer's help, I would fight for what was rightfully mine. Next, I knew I had to confront Jake at work. It wasn't going to be easy, but I needed to face him. I wanted him to know that I wasn't going to back down. I arrived at the office, my heart pounding. As I walked through the halls, I could feel the eyes of my colleagues on me. They knew something was up. I knocked on Jake's office door and pushed it open without waiting for a response. Jake looked up, his face a mask of surprise and annoyance. Emily, what are you doing here? I'm here to tell you that I know everything. And I'm not going to let you get away with it, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Jake scoffed. What are you going to do? You're sick, Emily. You should be resting, not causing a scene. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I've spoken to my lawyer. We're going to fight you on the house, and I'm going to tell the bosses about what you've done. Jake's face hardened. You think you can scare me? Go ahead, tell them, see if I care. I met his gaze squarely. I'm not trying to scare you, Jake. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. You can't just throw me away because I'm sick. Jake leaned back in his chair, a smug look on his face. You really think you can win this? I'm not the bad guy here, Emily. I'm just trying to move on with my life. I felt a surge of anger. By selling our home? By leaving me with nothing? Jake shrugged. Life is tough, Emily. You should know that better than anyone. I shook my head, disgusted. I can't even recognize you anymore, Jake. You're not the man I married. Jake's expression didn't change. maybe you never really knew me at all." With that, I turned and walked out of his office. I had said what I needed to say. Now it was time to fight. In the days that followed, my life turned into a whirlwind of paperwork, meetings, and strategy sessions. My health was improving, but my battle was far from over. With each passing day, I gathered more evidence to support my claim to the house. My larger financial contribution was a strong point in my favor, and I was determined to see this through. My lawyer was optimistic. "Emily, you have a solid case. The numbers don't lie, and given the circumstances, it's unlikely a judge will side with Jake," he assured me over the phone. The relief I felt was palpable. "Thank you," I replied. "I appreciate your help more than you know." "We're not there yet, but things are looking up," he cautioned. I understood. The legal world was unpredictable, but for the first time in a while, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. At work, the atmosphere was tense. My confrontation with Jake had become office gossip. Some colleagues whispered in corners, others offered quiet support. It was uncomfortable, but I couldn't let it distract me. I decided to meet with our bosses and lay everything out. It was a tough conversation, but necessary. I told them about Jake's betrayal, the house, everything. They listened, their faces a mixture of shock and empathy. "We're so sorry, Emily. This is unacceptable," one of them said. "The situation with Jake will be dealt with. This behavior can't be tolerated," the other added. Hearing their support was a relief. I didn't have to face Jake at work anymore. Days later, they called to tell me they had let Jake go. His actions didn't align with the company's values. It was a small victory, but it meant the world to me. My health was on the upswing, the treatments were working, and my doctors were hopeful. It was a glimmer of hope in a sea of chaos. One evening, as I sat in my small rental, contemplating my next steps, my phone rang. It was Jake. I hesitated but answered. "Emily, please, we need to talk." He sounded desperate. "What's there to talk about, Jake?" I asked, my voice firm. "I was wrong. I've been fired. I'm sorry, Emily. I didn't think it would come to this," he said, almost pleading. I took a deep breath. "You hurt me, Jake. Deeply. I can't just forget that." "I know, I regret it. Can we find a way to settle this without going to court?" he asked, sounding beaten. After a short pause, I replied, "I will not back down. Never." There was silence on the other end. "I understand. I'll have my lawyer contact yours," he finally said. Jake's call didn't change anything. He had shown his true colors, and there was no going back. I was a different person now, stronger and more determined. After the dust settled with the house and my divorce, I found myself standing at the beginning of a new chapter. It was a strange feeling, like stepping into the unknown after a long, turbulent journey. My health was improving, but the road to full recovery was still ahead of me. One afternoon, I was at the clinic for a checkup. The waiting room was quiet, just the hum of the air conditioner filling the space. When the nurse called my name, I followed her to the examination room. Dr. Simmons, my oncologist, greeted me with a warm smile. "Good to see you, Emily. How are you feeling?" "Better, thank you," I replied, taking a seat. "That's what we like to hear," he said, going over my chart. "Your latest scans show improvement. The treatment is working." I exhaled a sigh of relief. "That's great news." "Yes, but remember, it's a long road. You need to take care of yourself," he reminded me. "I know, and I will," I assured him. He nodded, satisfied. "Good. We'll keep monitoring your progress." Leaving the clinic, I felt a mix of emotions. Hope, certainly, but also a sense of responsibility. This was my life, and I had to take charge of it. Back at work, I threw myself into my projects. It was a distraction, but also a reminder that I had a purpose beyond my illness and personal troubles. One day, I was in the break room when I overheard a couple of colleagues talking. "Did you hear about Jake? He's trying to get his job back," one of them said. "Really? After what he did?" "Good luck with that," the other replied. I stayed silent, stirring my coffee. Jake's choices were his own. I had my path to follow, and it didn't include him. After work, I met up with my friend Sarah for dinner. She had been a rock throughout everything. "How are you holding up?" she asked as we sat down. "I'm okay, taking it one day at a time," I answered. That's all you can do, and hey, you're doing amazing, she said, offering a reassuring smile. I nodded. Thanks, I couldn't have done it without your support. We're in this together, she said, raising her glass. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, I echoed, clinking my glass with hers. The next few months were a blend of routine and small victories. Each doctor's visit brought good news. My strength was returning, and with it, a newfound determination to live life on my terms. The treatments had worked, and the doctors were optimistic. I was officially in remission. As I walked into the office that morning, I felt a sense of pride. I had not only kept my job through the toughest times, but also excelled. My team greeted me with warm smiles and congratulations. The workday was busy, but I didn't mind. Being productive gave me a sense of normalcy. Later, I met Sarah for lunch. She had been more than a friend. She was my pillar of strength. You look radiant, Emily, she said as we sat down at our favorite cafe. I feel it too, Sarah. It's like a new beginning, I responded, smiling. And you deserve every bit of it. So, what's next for you? She asked, sipping her coffee. I've been thinking about that. I want to give back, maybe volunteer at the cancer center. Share my story, help others. I said, the idea resonating with me more and more. That's wonderful, Emily. You'll be amazing at it, she encouraged. After lunch, I went for a walk in the park. The sun was shining and the air was fresh. I took a moment to sit on a bench and just breathe. Life was precious, and I was here, living it. As I walked back home, my phone rang. It was my boss, Mr. Thompson. Emily, good news. The board has approved your proposal for the new project, he said. That's fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I won't let you down, I replied, excitement building up. I know you won't. Keep up the good work, he said, before ending the call. Back at home, I reflected on my journey. From the shock of my diagnosis to the betrayal and divorce, it had been a roller coaster of emotions. But here I was, standing tall. I decided to write a blog post, sharing my story with the world. As I typed, the words flowed effortlessly. It was a story of pain, resilience, and ultimately, triumph. When I hit publish, I felt a sense of liberation. My story was out there, and if it could inspire even one person, it was worth it.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.